Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about Deaf Noodles because Keemstar has just broken this man, and all the drama between them, it's clearly affecting Deaf Noodles a lot more than Keemstar. You know, Keemstar, I feel like he just thrives off of all the negativity and drama, and Deaf Noodles, like, this stuff really gets to him, and I think he might have finally realized that talking about Keemstar isn't really worth it, because on his podcast the other day, his friends basically gave him like an intervention, and they're like, dude, you gotta take it easy with the Keemstar stuff. It's clearly not good for you, and it's consuming your life, and the negativity isn't worth it. And he's clearly just trying to get you all worked up and angry. And I think it's funny because Keemstar's internet presence and his popularity is just slowly declining, and not that many people pay attention to him anymore. So if Deaf Noodles just ignored him, I feel like that would get to Keemstar a lot more than making video after video about him. I feel like Keemstar loves that shit. Like, in my opinion, I think if H3 and Deaf Noodles just stopped talking about Keemstar completely and just stopped giving him any attention, I feel like he'd be off the internet a lot sooner. Like, Deaf Noodles talking about Keemstar, there's really no point to it anymore because it's not good for Deaf Noodles. You know, it's not good for his health. He's basically admitted that. Like, the other day on the same podcast, he said that he talks to his therapist about Keemstar.
That man is like petty. He's petty, and I mean, a lot of people who will like psychoanalyze him and say that he's like a sociopath or all this shit. Yeah. My therapist thinks he's like a sociopath. I don't know. But yeah, I do. I talk about Keemstar with my therapist. Yeah. So,
I mean, makes sense. Yeah.
Well, if you're talking to your therapist about some drama you're in with another YouTuber, I'd say it's probably time to stop talking about that YouTuber. Like, it's clearly not good for you. And I'd imagine this is probably what the therapist told him. Like, if you're really this worked up about it and it's gotten to you this much, you should probably just try your best to ignore the guy. It's not good for you. The more you pay attention to him and the more you talk about him. And I feel like ever since Deaf Noodles started talking about Keemstar and getting in that whole beef with him, I think he's just gotten more and more negative and bitter and petty too. Like, he's just slowly turning into Keemstar basically. And even after this podcast, after his friends told him that the best thing to do is probably just ignore him, on his newest episode of his show on his main channel, he still referenced Keemstar, and Noodles just sounded like he was out of control and unhinged. Like, he started talking about Vitaly and how Vitaly attacked some woman a few years ago when he was high on bath salts or crack or something like that. And, you know, obviously Vitaly, he's not a good dude and he's a piece of shit for doing that. But Deaf Noodles said some pretty extreme things about Vitaly, and he probably could have gotten his video taken down or something. Like, I don't know how he said this stuff, especially because he's like really anti-guns and gun violence and everything. Like, just check out what he said here.
So in Vitaly's case, not only do I not have any sympathy for him, but I actually wish that the guy he was fighting brought out a gun and just straight up shot him in the head.
Jesus Christ. I don't know how he left this in the video and thought this was a good idea to post or whatever, because, I mean, this is pretty extreme shit. And obviously he'd say this is a joke or something, which I guess it kind of is, but I mean, that sounded really serious. And I mean, he obviously hates Vitaly, and I don't know, it sounds like he wishes he was dead, honestly. Like, I don't understand how this is really a joke, but also I'm not a comedian, so maybe Noodles could explain this joke to me, because he's obviously a well-trained comedian. He does stand up all over the country. He knows what he's talking about. Maybe there's something I'm missing here. But I mean, I will admit that this is funny unintentionally. Like, when I first saw this, I was laughing my ass off, because this is just a crazy thing to say in a YouTube video. Like, how did you think that this was a good idea to say that you wish some guy was shot in the head? Like, for this to be a joke, I feel like you'd have to think of some creative way to lead into him being punished for what he did or something. I feel like you can't just be like, oh, he was boxing earlier today. I wish instead of boxing, the guy just shot him in the head. Like, what? I don't know how he came up with that. And it's just even weirder that he left that in the video. Like, if you did a take and you were all pissed off, you're like, man, I hate this guy because he attacked a woman, and you accidentally say, like, I wish someone shot him in the head, and you're like, oh shit, I really didn't mean that. But he recorded this and left it in there and acted like this was just something normal to say. Like, dude, no, this is pretty out there. And apparently you're anti-gun violence and anti-guns and everything. Like, I think if you actually stood for that stuff, you probably wouldn't want to say this in a YouTube video. You probably wouldn't want to advocate for gun violence. even if it is a joke or whatever the hell you want to call this, I just don't understand how anybody takes this guy seriously. Even Ethan Klein, who Noodles defends relentlessly and always tries to make him out like he's a good guy and he's doing the right thing, even Ethan doesn't really have that much respect for him. Like, he finally had him on his podcast after his fans were asking him to have him on forever. And this is the thumbnail for the podcast, and this is the title. He put a silhouette of Trisha Paytas, and he titled it "Surprise Reunion for Second Annual Steamies." Like, this is so insulting. He could even put a silhouette of Def Noodles at least, and not put like reunion. Like, that indicates that, like, he's obviously trying to make it sound like Trisha Paytas is coming back. He's got a picture of her and then a reunion, like, so everyone thinks, oh, Trisha's finally come back, and that's the only way the podcast will get views, because Ethan probably knows if he just has Def Noodles on the front, nobody really will care. Like, obviously the fans are like, yeah, we love Def Noodles and all that, but go watch that podcast. It's like Ethan just talking to himself. Def Noodles doesn't add anything, in my opinion. I think Ethan only had him on there because the fans have been wanting him on there for such a long time. Like, after Frenemies ended, they all wanted Ethan to have him on as the co-host. And then also, I feel like Ethan had him on just because Noodles is so good to Ethan, and he always says positive things about him and always makes it sound like he's on the winning end of situations and everything. And it just seems like he would never say anything negative about Ethan, and I'm sure Ethan wants to keep it that way. Alright, so back to the whole Def Noodles and Keemstar situation. So Def Noodles, he started that podcast, and I think like half the episodes are just about Keemstar, and until recently, I think every video of his had something to do with Keemstar. So, I mean, his fans cannot get enough of Keemstar. And I can't talk that much shit because I make a lot of H3 videos, but I still don't think I talk about H3 as much as he talks about Keemstar. And it's hard to tell what his fans really think about it, because a lot of them are just like, yeah, talk about whoever you want, like, it's your channel or whatever. But him talking about Keemstar is clearly not good for his health. So at this point, I feel like they should probably encourage him not to talk about Keemstar, because it's just not good for him. And I also feel like the more he talks about him, the more he starts to act like him. Like the clip I played earlier of him saying that somebody should shoot Vitaly in the head. Like, I feel like that's something to do with Keemstar. I feel like Keemstar is just always in his head, and he's always so pissed off about it. He just cannot control himself. And if you're going to be on the internet, I feel like you can't let anybody get to you that much. And you can't let people know that they're getting to you, because that only makes it even worse. And Noodles is not the kind of person that can handle drama, clearly. So if I were him, I should just try to stay out of it all. Like, if Keemstar does something that's fucked up to you, you know, then talk about it. But I feel like bringing him up every video and every podcast basically for the same shit, at this point, it's not worth it. It's not worth, like, the whole mental toll it takes on you. And this is the kind of stuff that his friends on his podcast told him. And they sound like they got the right idea, because it sounds like, I think they're comedians, maybe, like they're stand-up comedians, and they're not on the internet that much. Well, they're not on as much as a YouTuber probably, or something, I don't know. But it sounds like they aren't that aware of Keemstar, so they hear this and they're just like, dude, who cares? Like, just, it's not worth the headache. Like, he's clearly trying to get to you, and you're letting it happen, and you're showing him that it's getting to you. So there are a couple other parts of this podcast that I wanted to play, and one of them is when Def Noodles' friend is like kind of shitting on Keemstar by saying, like, yeah, it's so messed up how people just trash talk other people's content for a living, and they don't do anything original. You know, their content is just talking about someone else's content. But he doesn't realize that he's describing Def Noodles too.
Because yeah, it takes no talent and no energy, no real constructive measure to just fucking shit talk on someone else's work and let that be your work in itself. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna let you actually put in all the time and effort to create something and create a platform, and as soon as you pick it up and throw it out there, I'm just gonna shit on it, and that's gonna be my platform and shit on you. That's noise. That's noise, man. That's whack.
Yeah, I fuck with that.
Yeah, especially like as comedians, we want to make people laugh, which is healing and which is love.
So I just think it's funny that this guy was describing Def Noodles, and he's sitting there like, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like all Def Noodles does is just talk about other people's content and shits on it. And he's not like saying anything that positive. Like, it's usually just negative the whole time. Like, he was talking about how he wishes Vitaly was shot in the head, and this girl is sitting here like, oh, us as comedians, we want to make people love and heal and everything. Like, no, Def Noodles is an angry dude who is very bitter, and he's even starting to sound violent now. And it just does not seem like he's doing that show just to, make people laugh and feel good. Like, his show on his main channel, it's toxic. It's not some wholesome channel where it's just a comedian telling some jokes. Like, he talks about people that he absolutely hates, and he just gets all pissed off and angry about it. Like, the dude on his channel is so angry nowadays. Like, every second he's like, fuck this, fuck that. Keemstar's a piece of shit. This guy's a piece of shit. And then he's like, oh, it's just all comedy. I'm just trying to be funny. Like, why can't you just admit you hate these people and you want to talk shit about them? I'd be a lot more okay with that. And I'll admit, I do some of the similar things. Like, I just talk about other people's content. I usually trash it. But I try not to just be like, yeah, fuck this guy. I wish he was like shot in the head or whatever. Like, I try to actually make some valid points. I usually don't try to just be like, this guy's a piece of shit, fuck this guy, fuck that guy. Like, I try to actually change people's opinions on other people or like topics. I'm not just trying to make a video towards like one audience and be like, yeah, I'm gonna make these people happy by just saying everything they want to hear. Like, Def Noodles at this point, he's not changing anyone's opinion of Keemstar. Like, he's just preaching to the choir. There's nobody that's gonna watch his video that's a Keemstar fan and be like, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. Keemstar is a inbred dumb fuck. All right, so there's just one more clip from his podcast that I wanted to play where they're all reacting to this other YouTuber who's reacting to a Def Noodles video. It's just like everyone reacting to each other, but this kid is roasting Def Noodles in the video and they're all reacting to it, and the co-host, Def Noodles co-host, is like, man, this kid needs to touch some grass. And this is funny because, again, this is the same kind of content that Def Noodles makes. This kid is just making fun of someone else's content. It's the same thing Def Noodles does. And Def Noodles, he needs to touch grass as well. Def Noodles does, I think, a show every single day. He does like shorts, he does TikToks, he has like an Instagram repost stuff, and he does a podcast. Like, this dude needs to take a break for his own sanity.
Just not like Sniper Wolf or something. Just finding random clips on the internet.
So yeah, he's like getting. So those are the videos that I said, like,
these kids need to go outside.
I have another. I have
a hobby.
I have another channel, and that's the channel that he showed. Basically, just to give context, because I don't like the audiences don't intersect between that channel and this channel and my other like channels.
So this is the problem that Def Noodles has. He always feels like he's like being personally attacked and he has to defend himself. Like, dude, this is just someone shitting on your content just like you do to everyone else's content. And you don't need to react to this and try to explain yourself. Like, the best thing here to do is just ignore it. Obviously it sucks when people make fun of you and everything, but you're on the internet. That's just what happens on the internet, and you do the same shit. Like, I cut it off, but he was kind of getting into it. He explains like his whole TikTok channel and everything, explains how he makes the content and everything. Like, dude, it's not that big of a deal. Who cares? Like, all right, your content's cringy. If you're okay with making it and you don't have a problem with it, then just continue it. You don't need to answer to anybody. He's just so insecure about everything, like his comedy, his TikToks or whatever, like his show, just everything that he does on the internet. He just cannot handle any criticism, but he loves to shit talk other people. Like, dude, if you're going to be on the internet shit talking people for a living and you're going to be a comedian or whatever, and also in this podcast he's talking about like doing roast battles in New York and talking about how he doesn't even let people on the internet get to him because he's used to like being roasted by the best like comedians in the world or something like that. Like, dude, you're just lying to yourself. Nobody believes that shit. Like, you cannot handle anything. Like, this is some kid just making fun of your cringy TikTok, and you feel like it's necessary to explain yourself. Like, it's clearly getting to you. All right, so that's about it for this video. Make sure you hit the like button, leave me a comment, hit the subscribe button, and then I'll catch you at the next video.